Friends, Tal here, and welcome to my Legion Beta Tank Rankings video. Essentially, I'm going to be talking about in this video is my thoughts on the tanks as they currently are in the Legion Beta and how they rank. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that I probably look really pasty white like a ghost. I do apologize. My webcam isn't the best. The lighting that I have set up isn't the best. I'm not really this white in person. I mean, I am super pale, but like not this pale, so but that's not important. I just wanted to go ahead and throw that out there in case someone, is wondering why I look awful, like I'm gonna die or something. I'm not ill. I'm fine. I'm not super crazy healthy or anything, but like I'm not. No, I'm fine. Um, but essentially, we're gonna be talking about in this video is what I think about the tanks, how I rank them from worst to best, and I'm going to be specifically talking about why I'm ranking them in this way. Remember, I'm a mythic tank. My priority is I need to be playing a class that's going to be really good in the beginning of Legion when I'm very likely to not have a lot of gear, because essentially if you're in a mythic raid guild, your DPS get gear first. So I need to go into my raid with this mindset that essentially I need to provide for myself first, because anything that's really good that drops that a DPSer can use probably will go to a DPSer. So I need to make sure that I'm gearing myself up to be able to be effective at low gear levels. I need to be making sure that I have effective amounts of utility, cooldowns, and ways to keep myself alive, because again, remember, in Legion, you are very reliant on your healers. Tanks are not as strong as they were before in the past, especially not in the Mop and Watt era, and you need to be able to be somewhat self-sufficient because it's going to be an intense switch, and as people are learning the fights, obviously DPSers, healers are probably going to take more damage than they need to until they learn the mechanics to get things down faster. So you just have to be setting yourself up for success, and that's what I'm going to be speaking about in this video today. I'm going to say why I think a tank is at a certain position in my rankings, and then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give you a little bit of an insight to my mind process, my thinking, why I'm thinking like this. And I just want to go ahead and say outright, I don't think that tanks are in a negative. Tanking in Legion is not negative right now, okay? I'm just going to be super honest. I know Preach did a video a couple weeks, I think maybe almost a month ago, but a couple weeks ago, about his feelings on tanking. He said that it's very negative. He doesn't like the changes. And I really respect Preach. He's actually a person that has basically influenced me and made me want to do this as much as I am. So I want to go ahead and just politely say that I don't agree with him entirely. I understand his frustrations. I understand the problems that he does have. But I'm actually going to be addressing that in another video that I do after this one. That's going to be talking about the state of tanking in Legion. And why I think that as much as the changes are not all good, and yes, the changes do hurt seasoned veteran tanks that are confident, I don't think that it's an entirely negative thing. I don't think that, tanking is dead, it's not going to be any fun, it's going to be terrible. No. I think that there's a lot of promise and a lot of the tank specs, and I'm hoping that I'll be right. Of course, beta is beta. All of this can change. Please keep in mind, again, I am recording this on the 17th of June. All of this can change. So if you watch it a little bit later and everything I say is out the window, now you know why. But anyways, guys, we're going to go ahead and get right into it. And I'm going to be explaining my worst to best tanks that I'm thinking about playing, tanks that I think are going to be going into mythic raids. Remember, mythic raids, mythic dungeons, that's what I'm talking about. Not PvP, not questing, not solo, none of that. We're talking mythic dungeons, mythic raids. Alright guys, I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. Alright, so up first, sadly in 6th place, is my pride and joy, the class and spec that I've loved for so long, the Brewmaster Monk. And I don't think it's much of a surprise to anyone if you've been watching my content or if you've been keeping up with the tank changes. Brewmasters have been hit pretty hard with the change bats. For the first time in this game, since I've been playing this game, I finally feel what it's like to have a spec that you adored and you loved for so long change to feel like something that you haven't played before. The Brewmaster doesn't feel like it used to feel. It has fundamentally changed. And whether that's a good or bad thing, honestly, I can't really say just yet. I would honestly say that the Brewmaster will probably be fine, but the issues I have with it and why I don't think it makes for a viable main tank to be raiding with and mythic dungeons is that it has a couple of concerns. First of all, is concerns about damage reduction. Brewmaster's baseline have a single big cooldown, which is their Fortifying Brew, and their Ironskin Brew simply increases their stagger. Now you're going to be using Purify and Brew more often to go ahead and clear that stagger off, and it's very important that you do that. But beyond that, you have to talent into Diffuse Magic or Dampen Harm. And Dampen Harm is actually a much more difficult to trigger now because of the fact that you're staggering so much that big hits that just truck you for a certain percentage of your health don't actually come in all that often. So you find yourself in a position where you don't have a lot of damage reduction cooldowns to use. You do have Exploding Keg, which gives you about 3 seconds of 100%, dodging everything. But ultimately, I find myself lacking a short-term, small cooldown, maybe an Absorb like Guard used to be, maybe just a flat 20% damage reduction, something else, just to kind of make sure and feel like I'm not super reliant, entirely reliant on my healers. Now, the other concern that I have with it is some of the ideas that the dev team have been tossing out to us and telling us how to play the spec. My biggest issue with it is that, realistically speaking, the sweet spot that they're saying that we need to be in to generate Gift of the Ox healing orbs, and then also then start using our active mitigation, because you're not supposed to use Iron Skin Brew at 100% HP. You're supposed to use it at about 50 to 85% health. My issues with that is that going in under-geared into a raid, going in not completely knowing everything that's going to happen, everything that could happen. When you're going in, you don't have the best gear in the world, you don't have your set bonuses, all that kind of stuff. There can be situations where shit hits the fan, and you need to make sure that you are able to, beat the boss and still tank and stay alive when most of your healers are dead and they're trying to keep up the DPS mage that's trying to blow up the boss because we have 2% left. And because of those types of scenarios which can pop up, I find myself not fully trusting in the kit of the monk in the way that it's described in that blue post Celestalon had to keep me alive. Now, playing it, it felt okay. It didn't feel like I was on the verge of death constantly, but I definitely felt awkward. I didn't feel like I was having a lot of fun, and I didn't feel like if I needed to, I could survive completely on my own for enough time to let my raid stabilize itself. Now, mind you, I only did normal dungeons. Okay, let's be completely honest here. But from my experience playing it, I didn't feel comfortable enough, and I don't like a lot of the design choices they've made with the monk, as well as the talents. I think that, honestly, monks have the worst talents out of all the tank specs. They have almost no choice. They have no trade-offs. They have nothing interesting going on for them, and their level 100 talents are honestly a joke. They're all passive, they don't change your playstyle anyway, and they're not even all that interesting. Ultimately, I think that while they're changing the monk for good reasons, I think that they haven't quite hit the mark, and I would almost even say it's a step back from the evolution of the monk from MUP to WOD. Ultimately, my opinion of it is that it's awkward to play, and that's why I have to put it at the lowest of the rankings. Alright, and now next up we have the Protection Warrior. Now I do want to mention that in my personal opinion, I have ranked the Protection Warrior and the Blood DK together. And honestly, besides the Monk, I enjoy all of the tank specs. I think that they're all good, they all have really good benefits, they all can be really, really useful. It's just the Monk kind of, like I said, is very awkward, and I'm unsure about its viability at the end of the day. So please don't, spam me with saying, Protection Warriors are amazing, you just suck. Trust me, I know, I get it. And one of my biggest compliments that I want to give the Protection Warrior is that they're so solid and stable. They may not be able to heal themselves up to any great extent or degree, but I felt good while I was tanking on my Protection Warrior. I felt like I could handle anything that the game would throw at me, especially now that Spell Reflect is an actual magic damage reduction ability. And I just want to go ahead and say that again, I'm putting the Blood DK and the Warrior together for a very specific reason, and that is that they both share a resource concern. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the Warrior first then. My issue with the Warrior is that you are put into what was eloquently quoted by Preach as a rich man, poor man situation. You are either swimming in rage, and you feel like you can use your active mitigation, your abilities to protect yourself, to do stuff all the time, or you're in a poor man scenario, which almost always comes down to a single target scenario. And as we all know, whilst most raid bosses have ads and other things you have to deal with, some are single target encounters. And even the raid bosses that have ads don't have ads the entire time. The fact that the rage has been changed back to a damage taken formula, the fact that your gear, as it goes up, and it's going, the more that you mitigate, the more that you parry, you dodge, you absorb, the less rage you're going to be getting. I mean, that's the entire reason Ignore Pain lets through some damage, so that you're at least getting some sort of damage taken to give you rage. The fact that it's relying on that worries me. I think about fights like Fellord Zakun, where he's the only person hitting you, and yes, he hurts, but at the same time, he's attacking you decently slow. Getting rage there is going to be a giant pain, and I've said this a couple times now, but Ignore Pain is the big thing for prot warriors. Shield block only costs 10 rage. It's not difficult to use, but Ignore Pain needs more rage to be functional. And that is honestly why I feel that's my biggest concern when it comes to the prot warrior. I like Shield block and Ignore Pain. I like the talent choices that they have. I feel like they're strong. I like that they have some utility. They have a raid-wide aura that gives you 3% leech, I believe. You can talent into having... Vigilance is gone, but you can talent into making your intercept, which is on like a 20-second cooldown, do the same effect of Vigilance, just not letting you taunt as much as you want. That is a Vigilance on 20-second cooldown, guys. That's ridiculous to me. That's the kind of rage utility I want. That's the interesting things, the interesting ways that you deal with mechanics that don't necessarily have to be tank mechanics, but can be other raid mechanics that you can help your raid deal with by giving that extra cooldown. I think that's a very powerful thing for the Protection Warrior. What I want to say is that they feel strong and solid, but the rage is an issue. It really, truly is an issue. I'm not a seasoned warrior. I'm not a person that's been playing the warrior since vanilla, but I can tell you everyone that has played through the damage taken giving you rage period has only said negative things about it. And I think that is strong concern. It's a strong thing to be worried about. And if people that have played the class in that state are saying that it's a worry, I honestly am of the opinion that we should listen to them. And I think that just playing it myself, I felt having all the rage during AoE packs. And then I felt being starved at times when I didn't have the rage, where I would heroic leap, intercept back in just to give myself that sweet, sweet little red bar. I think that it does have some cause for concerns then, as well as as much as the vigilance on your charge is good, it's ultimately not as much utility as some of the other tank specs. It doesn't bring as much as the other tank specs do that make me as attracted to the Protection Warrior as I would be to the other ones. But again, as much as technically I'm saying this is the 5th in my list of 6, I don't mean that in a negative way. I like the way that they play. I think they're going to be fantastic tanks. I just see myself making use of the other tanks a little bit more and being able to push them to the extreme when it comes to mythic raiding, mythic dungeons, a little more than I can with the Protection Warrior. I think the tool set is a little wider and not as much focused down as the Protection Warrior. And that's why I just want to go ahead and let you guys know that I'm putting it at this low rank, not because it plays bad, not because it's awkward, not because it's not going to be able to be okay. I really want to emphasize, I think all the tanks will be fine. I just don't see the Protection Warrior, for my purposes, the way I think, being as useful to me in my raid as I would some of the other tanks. Again, it's mostly the rage concerns. I'm not liking the fact that with extra gear it's going to be even more difficult to get rage, and it can be a problem. I just hope that if they decide to do any changes, that they don't do it in the middle of the expansion and completely ruin warrior rage generation. I really, really hope that they mathed everything out right and everything's going to be fine, because that is a real serious cause for concern, and that's the only reason it's at this point here in my rankings. But otherwise, warriors are fun. They're fine, maybe not as great as WoD, but their talents are fantastic, and I can see a lot of potential in warriors. I think they're going to be just fine. And that brings me to the Blood DK. Now again, remember that I'm basically ranking both the warrior and the Blood DK together, mostly because I think that they are both really, really good. They're solid, they're strong. I would say that the Blood DK has some of the best talent choices out of all the tanks because they really have a good option and way of choosing the way that they want to reduce damage. But again, I'm brought back to one concern that I have for them, and that is mostly a resource concern. So let's go ahead and get into that then. So what I do like about the Blood DK, and what I think is very powerful, is that again, it still has a big emphasis on self-healing, and their talents give them so many choices. You have ways to turn your bone shields into up to a maximum 30% shield of your max health and just use it to reduce the damage of big attacks. You have so many things that increase your maximum health. You have so many ways that you're able to, depending on what talent you choose, change the way or react to situations in different ways. You can take Blood Tap if you want an extra rune. You can take Rune Tap if you want an extra little short damage reduction like you have in WoD now. And I think that it's very, very powerful that you're able to customize your DK the way that you need it according to each fight. Maybe every fight doesn't need a Rune Tap, and you can take a passive talent that maybe does something different. You know, you don't need to have I believe it's called Tombstone every single fight. But on that one fight where you need that big absorb shield, you'll be able to talent into it and be just fine. That is a powerful, powerful thing that I see in Blood DKs, as well as the OP-ness of Vampiric Blood. Now, Vampiric Blood, the reason I say OP-ness is that, not penis, sorry, fuck, OP-ness is that their Vampiric Blood has a short cooldown that also gets reduced by legendary items and by talents. You can actually keep up Vampiric Blood for a long, long time over the course of a fight. And it's very, very, very powerful. So I really, really like choices that the Blood DK has. But then I don't like other things that they don't have choices in. Runic Power has one use, Death Strike. And if you talent into it, Mark of Blood. But Mark of Blood is something that you apply like once every 30 seconds and then you're done. And the other issue is Death Strike heals for almost nothing. It feels bad. It feels bad to use Death Strike, which I would never have thought I'd be saying in a million years. When you use Death Strike, you expect to be healed a decent amount. And you do get some healing. And depending on how much damage you've taken in the last couple seconds, it gets increased. So it's not awful, but it's nowhere near what it used to be. And Consumption, which is the artifact ability that Blood DKs get, feels like a big oh shit button. It heals you for a massive amount, especially if you hit anything more than 2 targets, but it doesn't give you an absorb shield, so most of the time you're overhealing, and you use it as a panic ability. Now, my problem is Death Strike has always been such a powerful ability. It's being changed back to be very reliant on the damage you've taken in the last couple of seconds to heal, which, from my understanding, during Cataclysm, that proved to be very, very bad for certain fights in Firelands. And you're going to be at the mercy of mechanics and encounters and the way that bosses are designed if you're going to be relying on that version of Death Strike. Now, the Bone Shield change, which is combined to Morrowind, does alleviate some of that because the Bone Shields actually count as an absorption mechanic now. But there's still that issue of the fact that you don't have anything to use your runic power on besides Death Strike, and Death Strike isn't even all that fantastic all the time. And on top of that, your rune regen and your runic power regen, or rune regen, which leads to runic power, doesn't feel all that great. It really doesn't. There's an entire talent tier that's devoted to this, and I feel like the only viable, well, I say entire talent tier, I mean 2 talents on a tier are devoted to rune regen, and the only one I see viable is the one that makes you stand in death and decay and increase the rune regen, because the Soul Gorge feels like one of the most clunky things they've ever invented in this game, and it doesn't feel good to use, and I honestly probably will never use it, even so far as to say if they mathed out to be 10% better than the other talent, it would be a hard choice for me to make to pick that up because of how much extra attention I'm going to need to pay attention to, how much extra attention I'm going to need to give it, and how much of a difference it will really ultimately make. At the end of the day, though, DKs have a lot of good things. Their talents are fantastic. Gorfin's Grass has always been fantastic. It's very unfortunate it's on the 3-minute cooldown now. That really sucks. But you still have tools such as Anti-Magic Shell. You still have tools such as, again, Vampiric Blood being amazing. And it does feel good. When I was playing my Blood DK, I felt tanky. I felt good. I felt like I could handle anything the game could throw at me as long as I knew what it was beforehand, which as a tank, you need to do your homework. Please remember, I goof around a lot. I go into some of these dungeons not knowing what I'm doing, but that's because I'm just playing around right now. When I go into Mythic raids, when I go into HFC raids, or not HFC, but Legion raids, I'm going to know the fights beforehand. I'm going to know what I need, and I'm going to adjust my spec and my talents accordingly to whatever issues I may see that we have during the fight, during the encounter. And I think that Blood DKs are going to have a huge benefit there because they can just add things to themselves. It's like, oh, I feel like I need an additional short cooldown. Let me just take Rune Tap. Oh, this, Colossal Strike from McFuckface is fucking my face. Let me take Tombstone and there every single minute. Now I don't have to worry about this ability. I can ask for an external every time it comes up when my cooldown isn't up, but I don't use all the externals on just myself. And I think that that is a powerful, good thing for the Blood DK. Again, I mix it in with the Warrior because I have issues about the resource generation. I have issues with the fact that I think it'll be changed, but I don't know for sure if they're going to make that change. I don't know for sure how deep into the expansion they'll make talent tier changes, but if I'm already having resource issues from day one, it's not a vote of confidence that I feel super crazy about. The only reason, again, just like the Warrior, that it's down here on the lower end of the spectrum is I feel like I can do more with some of the other tank specs. The other issue I have with them is that Wraithwalk, as much as it's a great improvement on the mobility of the Blood DK, it is nowhere near enough for at least me, who is so used to monk rolling all over the place, and the amount of fantastic things I've been able to do with that mobility. I find issues with Wraithwalk, and it does diminish it a lot. As much as I almost want to put this as third or second, the movement, along with the resource generation, made me kind of feel the same way about Warriors. It has very, very good strengths. It has some glaring weaknesses and problems that I really hope don't become really big issues. And just the fact that Deathstrike has been neutered and made so much weaker and reverted back to a previous version that was not liked, just like Rage, is what's making me move it down here. Again, I want to clarify, it doesn't mean Blood DKs are bad. It just means that for my purposes and for the way that I look at raiding, the way that I look at my raid team, and the way that I'm going to be looking at encounters, I feel like I might get better use out of some of the other tanks. And again, Blood DK is decently fun. It should be fine. I just don't see it as being, in my opinion, the one of the top or the best in any way, shape, or form. As much as their talents do let them personally adjust themselves according to the fight, they don't have as much utility as the tanks, and mobility can be a killer. It's just something that I kind of have in the back of my mind when I'm doing these, when I'm thinking about what I'm going to be playing. And ultimately, I think the Blood DK, again, is okay, but it's just not fantastic. It's not that extra little dash of amazing. It needs that a little bit more to get it over that crest, over the edge, and into my top 2, top 3 of the specs. And that's why it's in the place that it's at. Way better than the Monk, just like the Warrior, way better than the Monk, personally speaking. But honestly, the Monk is the only one that I'm slightly negative towards. Everything else has its place and is decently well. Just how it fell down, honestly. But Blood DKs, I know will be fine. Gorfine's Grasp is fantastic, and Death Grip will always be great. But, issues with the fact that Deathstrike is still not the best. And if you don't need a heal, what do you do with your runic power? You just kind of waste it. Feels bad. And so we come to the Protection Paladin. Now, I want to preface this by saying that the Protection Paladin for me is a bit of a difficult one to rank. Mostly because playing it, I feel a little bored. It's a lot better than it used to be when the first inception of Protection Paladin on the Legion Beta, or the Legion Alpha into the Legion Beta, was dreadful. It was awful. It was boring. There was no choice. It was half of your abilities had no mitigation or defensive benefit whatsoever, and it felt kind of dumb to use them. Consecration had no purpose in a single target rotation. Avenger Shield did absolutely nothing. It didn't feel good at all. But to be fair, that has changed a lot. The talents really give it a lot of life as well. And there's more of a synergistic thing with the abilities that they use, especially Consecration. Standing in it just boosts almost everything. But while that is a big negative to it, and I personally find myself having more fun playing the Protection Warrior and playing the Blood DK, Protection Paladins bring so much to the table. It's hard to argue for them being worse off than the other two. Protection Paladins have pretty shitty self-healing. Okay, just gonna throw that out there. Most of the tanks, besides Vengeance, Demon Hunters, and Blood DKs, have shitty self-healing outs until they get older artifact traits. Guardian Druids and Prot Paladins have a spell that heals them, but it's kind of awful until you get the artifact traits to boost it. But to be fair, Prot Paladins have so many damage reduction cooldowns. Boring, yes, because it's just flat out damage reduction, but so many of them that it's kind of amazing. They have the Divine Protection. Actually, I'm pretty sure I fucked that up. Argent Defender is what I mean, which is going to save your life or reduce damage by 20% until you take a fatal blow for a couple seconds. They have the incredible amount of damage reduction that Shield of the Righteous does now. They have Eye of Tyr, their artifact ability that's giving them damage reduction. Their Avenger's Shield will eventually give them an Absorb Shield for a percentage of the damage that it causes, which is an artifact trait. Keep that in mind. It's so much damage reduction that they have all the time. They have 3 charges of Shield of the Righteous. They can keep it up for a decent amount of time. I wouldn't be surprised if with gear you can keep it up over 70, maybe 80% of the time. But don't quote me. I'm not a math guy. We've already proven this. But it's not just their own personal damage reduction. Which, by the way, their sprints, which is the Knight Templar thing, which honestly kind of falls into a similar situation as Wraithwalk, if I'm being entirely honest. Whereas, yes, it's really nice and it's a big boost, but it's for such a short time. Protection Paladins aren't winning any mobility awards here, but you can talent that to be a 20% damage reduction too. That's ridiculous. But on top of that, they have their blessings. They have Bop. They have the blessing, or not. Is it blessing or hand? I don't know. They've changed the blessing of protection to hand of protection and back so many times I lose track of it. But they still have Bop. They still have the blessing of sacrifice. They can talent into Blessing of Spell Warding, which is Bop but magical. So depending on the fight, you can even use that as a personal tank cooldown, or you can use it on an ally. You have Aegis of Light, which is exactly the type of spell I want tanks to have. I want all tanks to have shit like this. You put up a barrier of light, and everyone standing behind you within 10 yards just takes 20% less damage. That's what it means to be a tank. They have all these ridiculous tools and abilities and things that they can do. It's so impossibly hard for me not to rate them high, because they have the tools to make the life of your raid easier, as well as reduce the damage they're taking and give your healers the time to heal them back up. Again, it's not super fun to play, if I'm entirely honest. Everything is charges with Protection Paladin, and the loss of Holy Power, while ultimately will be fine, is kind of shitty because there's a lot of pre-planning. It was kind of nice having the Holy Power, but I'm not saying that I want it back or anything. I'm just kind of saying that playing with it, it was methodical and it had a lot of thinking behind it. I enjoyed it, at least. But playing it is a little bit boring. I have to admit that. But they have so many things. They have all the things, and their talents give them a wide diversity of additional utility and some extra healing they can give the raid, and just extra little things that they can do here and there to make them better. I think that their artifact ability is great for AoE as well, because you have to keep in mind that it basically blasts out damage and gives you 20% damage reduction to everything that's hitting you that you hit with that. So that's really good. Some of the artifact traits are really, really powerful. They still have Bubble, reduce all damage on them. And they even have a talent now where they bubble and then they automatically taunt everything to them. It's hard for me to argue against Protection Paladins having a lot of utility, because the truth of the matter is they do. They have a lot of shit going on. My biggest issues with it is the self-healing. It's pretty mediocre until you get all the artifact traits. It won't be great at all. Of course, you're still going to be relying on your healer. All the tanks are going to be relying on the healer. But beyond the fact that it's a little bit boring to play and they're self-healing, Light of the Protector is kind of, or Hand of the Protector, I can't remember. I know there's one's a talent, one's a base spell, but it kind of feels shitty until you get everything maxed out. But they have fan-fucking-tasting amounts of utility. They have all these things that they can put out. And as far as I'm aware, their damage has either recently been reduced or is going to be reduced because they were bursting out crazy, ridiculous amounts of damage. Because they were able to use things like Seraphim, because they have Avenging Wrath, they gave them wings back. They just have a flat out, 20% damage, 20% healing cooldown, which is fantastic. I want my tanks to have an ability to go balls to the wall DPS as much as they can in safe moments. They have Seraphim, which gives you the choice of giving up 2 charges of Shield of the Righteous to do more damage as you're bursting with Seraphim. And you can choose to use that in key moments in the fight when you're not tanking, when you don't need the damage reduction, when something needs to die right fucking now. And I value those types of choices. There's so much good in that choice, and especially Seraphim. It doesn't replace anything. Seraphim uses up charges, so you can legitimately use Seraphim because maybe in 2 moments in the entire fight you will use it, and sure, that's not the most effective use of your talents if you're using it twice in an entire fight, but if you kill that thing, or if you survive through whatever the fuck it is that you're trying to do because you took Seraphim, and the rest of the fight you just use your charges on Shield of Righteous because Shield of Righteous gives you so much damage reduction, that alone makes it worth it. And it's that kind of value that I look for in tanks, especially what I want to play. And that's why the Prop Paladin is in the 3rd spot, top 3 I would say. And I just, it's so hard for me to say that it's not good. As much as it's a little bit boring, again, just throwing that out there, and very, very reliant on the artifact traits. All the tanks are reliant on artifact traits, but the Prop Paladin especially just doesn't even get a bonus to their Avenger Shield. Like, until you get the artifact traits, there's almost not a point in using it besides doing damage, because it's not going to keep you alive. Full disclosure, I fucking love the Vengeance Demon Hunter. This spec has just been an absolute pleasure and joy to watch grow from being a little shit stain in the Legion Alpha, because let's be fucking clear, the original version of Vengeance was very, very shit. It was obvious that all the attention had been paid to Havoc. It was obvious that all the good shit was given to Havoc, and they were really focusing in on that because it was a really cool glaive-wielding, super amazing Illidan-style DPSer, and Vengeance got like 4 things on the side. So from the inception, Vengeance was very bad, but it has grown and become my most favorite spec in Legion simply due to how well it meshes together, how much it reminds me of the old Brewmaster, and how there were many different aspects to it that work together to keep you alive. It doesn't play like the old Brewmaster, but having those different things working in conjunction was originally what drew me to the Brewmaster so much. And again, you have all those things in the Vengeance Demon Hunter, and that's why I've placed it at number 2. Now, only number 2, you might say. Why only number 2 if it's your favorite, if you love it so much? Well, because I'm trying my best to be at least a little bit objective about it. Right now, the Vengeance Demon Hunter, the issues with it is that it is a little bit squishy. And it is very much similar to the original Brewmaster dilemma of when it's a good Brewmaster or when it's a bad Brewmaster, just like the Vengeance Demon Hunter right now, you know. So when you have a bad Vengeance Demon Hunter, you're gonna fucking know. Trust me. And when you have a good Vengeance Demon Hunter, you're not gonna know what the fuck is going on. Trust me. It's gonna happen. That's how it's gonna work out. At least until people figure things out. The Demon Hunter can be a little bit squishy. And they require knowing when to use each of the different ways to keep it alive. Soul Cleave, Soul Fragments, and just managing your pain is going to be very, very important aspects. That's going to take the population, a few months to figure out exactly how to use. So that's why I'm trying to explain a little bit. If you guys go into the expansion, you get a Vengeance Demon Hunter tank, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, they wipe the group, that's probably why. But it's all those things that I said before that work together to keep them alive. The synergy of the spec. It's like they wrote Vengeance Demon Hunter, and the defining trait was synergy, and they made everything work around that. Every aspect of the Vengeance Demon Hunter feeds into each other aspect, and it itself is it's like an amalgamation of some of the best parts of every other tank. I've said this a couple of times now, but Vengeance Demon Hunters have the mobility to rival and match Prot Warriors and Monks. They have the cooldowns and rage utility that Blood DKs can bring, along with their self-healing, and they're able to do some just wildly fantastic things. They have talents that really flesh out and give the spec some meat. Until you're level 110, you're not going to get the complete picture of playing a Vengeance Demon Hunter. That is a problem. As you're leveling, you probably won't be playing it optimally. You won't have all the tools. Unlocking Fellblade, if you watch my stream from when I did that, was momentous. Because all of a sudden, my rotation became this smooth, just slicing and dicing, and it felt so fucking good. I can't even put to words how good it feels to play this spec. But that doesn't mean it's perfect. Now, because it relies on those talents, and not all the talents are active abilities. Some of them are passive, and some of them are very focused. Now, you have to make a couple of choices as to whether you're going to be trying to get more pain generation, as to whether you're trying to get more control over your soul fragments, or you want to do your sigils. Sigils are an amazing utility. You have Gorfien's Grasp, essentially. So one of your sigils is a mass grip, just straight up, and it's on a 2-minute cooldown. You don't need a talent like the Blood DK to lower that cooldown. It's just flat out at 2 minutes. And then you have an AoE Silence sigil. You have an AoE Disorient sigil. You have an AoE Fire Damage sigil. And those sigils can have their cooldown reduced depending on a legendary item that you might pick up, or set bonuses, things like that. There's ways to, if you do it right, you can target Sigil of Change, which is Gorfien's Grasp, to reduce the cooldown constantly. And I'm talking a shit ton of cooldown reduction. I'm talking you potentially have Gorfien's Grasp up every minute or so in Legion with a Vengeance Demon Hunter. And that's kind of fucked up because, it's the Blood DK's primary, it was theirs first, or the DK's first. And they took it away from the DPS specs, and then Blood has to talent in to make it less. But it's that kind of utility that's fantastic. Another thing that I adore about the Vengeance Demon Hunter is so many of its abilities do fire damage, and when you get the artifact traits that make fire damage heal you, all of a sudden, they're not just DPS abilities. Fellblade isn't just giving you pain. It also does a fire damage slash, which, hey, it's a little bit of healing. Sigil of Flame. There's a giant pack of creatures over there that you're going to Sigil of Flame. Well, wait, hold up a little bit. Let them hit you, maybe dip a little bit, then Sigil of Flame back up. Immolation Aura, same thing. Gives you pain, but also heals you. Everything works together, and it flows. It feels fantastic. I don't even have all the talents, and I already feel good playing it. And the talents that I'm going to be getting later on, they're just, you have choices. You can choose to take something, I believe it's called Fell Devastation, which is essentially take your pain, channel it into a beam, very similar to I-Beam for Havoc Demon Hunters. You're going to do massive amounts of damage, but you'll also have some healing on the side. It won't be as much healing as if you put it all into Soul Cleave, but maybe you don't need that healing. Maybe you can afford to get that damage in. Managing your soul fragments, which is basically another resource they have. Soul fragments, you can choose to heal yourself using Soul Cleave with them, or you can explode the soul fragment into a group of enemies and just make it so that you heal when you attack them. I fucking love it. There's choices. You don't even have to use your pain on Soul Cleave. Let's say you're saving your fragments for something else, or let's say you don't need the healing from Soul Cleave. You use your pain on Fell Eruption to create more soul fragments that you can then bomb the enemy target with Spirit Bomb, and I don't know what else to say. Even Demon Spikes, they're active mitigation, which gives them parry, some damage reduction. It combos well with Empower Wards, which is just a very boring but flat baseline. Just like you use it, you take 30% less magic damage. But Demon Spikes even has a talent that makes it so that when you pop it, you do increased damage for a certain amount of time, which means you can make sure that when you use it, you're also going to be able to try to burst something down, or if you're trying to tank a very hard-hitting ad, think about Gorfien on Mythic, especially if you were progressing, you had the Gorebound Spirit, I think it was his name, that you have to kill. You'd be able to do more damage to it while you're popping a defensive to keep yourself alive. And that's just such a valuable tool. It's so good. I don't know how many other ways to say it. You have so much mobility, which is always perfect in a tank. It's just it's useful, it's fun, it's good, it looks good, it has good cooldowns. You have Soul Carver, which is your artifact ability, which will heal you but also generate soul fragments. So you have a reliable, every 1.5 minutes you can generate soul fragments if you're in an oh shit moment. You have Metamorphosis, which is going to increase the healing that you do, especially if you take a talent that gives you leech on it. You just have all these different builds, all these different avenues, different ways to approach the same fight, and tools to face it. It reminds me a lot of the Blood DK in that you can talent for very specific things to counter other specific things, depending on the encounter and the boss that you need to do. You don't have to, most of the tiers don't have a singular choice that you're going to be, all the time. No. Even the level 100 tier, or 110 tier, I should say. It has Super Guard, which is funny because they took Guard away from Monks because it was retarded, but they gave it back to Demon Hunters in an even more powerful form. You have, what's it called? Purgatory, but the Demon Hunter version, so that when you're going to die, you instead go into Metamorphosis form at 30% of your health, which, by the way, is crazy. And in an artifact trait, you just randomly burst into Metamorphosis form, which gives you pain, increases your max health. It's hard to give anything but praise to this spec. The original version of it was awful. It was terrible. It was one of the worst specs I'd ever played in my life. It was boring. It was awful. The way it is now, it just feels so good. It synergizes. It flows. It feels fantastic. It has answers to almost every single problem I could think of. It might be a little bit weak to magic damage. So if we ever get another Li Shi fight, fuck her, because that was fucking terrible. But if we ever get another one of those, you might be in a little bit of a squishy situation. And that's my biggest thing about the Vengeance Demon Hunter. They have cooldowns and ways to reduce damage, and they have tools. They have Fiery Brand, which is a 40% damage reduction on a very small cooldown. Everything's doing fire damage. Everything's healing you. You have choices, but you might be a little bit squishy. And remember, from my perspective, going in Mythic Raids, I won't be super overgeared, and I won't be having first choice on all the gear. So that is a legitimate issue. You have less just baseline damage reduction than the other tanks do. Even monks, who technically don't have any, just flat out damage reduction either, they're at least staggering all the time. So when you get hit hard, you get hit fucking hard. But even with all those drawbacks, I still see this not only as being my favorite spec out of all the tanks, but also possibly the most powerful or second to most powerful of all the tank specs because of the choices and the options and the abilities that you have. And that's why I have to place it in number 2. My heart says it's number 1, but logic and just knowing how the fight's going to go work out, and just the fact that I know that you are a little bit squishy at times if you're not managing things properly, and especially if you don't have the gear for it, it makes me have to put it in number 2, which leads us to number 1. The big stalwart bear. The Guardian Druid has received possibly the most dramatic change in my mind that I've ever had about a spec. Even the Vengeance Demon Hunter, with its shitty first inception, I knew it still had to go through changes. I knew it still had to get better, so I wasn't too concerned about it. But I have disliked Guardian Druid tanking for the longest time. I think I've never played a bear druid in World of Warcraft. Okay? I've made one, and I leveled one in WoD just so I could have it in my back pocket if I ever needed it, but I've never really liked or enjoyed the way that they played. I saw it as archaic. I saw it as a spec that was so far in the past, dealing with just shitty mechanics, when dodge was all over the spec. It was fucking disgusting. But people liked it, and it always was good. It was always able to raid everything. It was fine. But for me, it was never a spec that I liked. My oh my, have things changed. The Guardian Druid, currently on the Legion beta, it was just flat out, above and beyond, by many, many miles, the best spec. And it's been slowly nerfed over time. A lot of its base damage reduction has been brought back down. It's been getting small, targeted nerfs here and there. And I applaud Blizzard, because for one of the first fucking times in a long time, they didn't go out and smash it with the hammer. They brought it back slowly. They nerfed things here and there. They brought it under control. And what you have now is a spec that feels solid, that has a lot of choices, that is just powerful, that has utility, and that while it was OP at one point, it is now not OP. It is just good. And in the hands of a good player, even better. Druids, there's a couple of things in my head that are making me have to put Druid at number 1. Now, maybe you might not agree with those things. Maybe you think that I should stick with Vengeance Demon Hunter being number 1. That's personal opinion, of course. Maybe you think Prop Paladin is number 1, other things are number 1. But I'm going to go ahead and explain to you why I think Druid has to sit at the throne currently, as it stands. First of all, at the very core of the Bear Druid, their mastery. Their mastery increases their base health or their max health, and then increases the amount of healing that they receive. Flat out, if a healer heals a Bear Druid and a healer heals a Blood DK, the heal is worth more on the Bear Druid. This will be true forever. Okay, for the entire time of the game, until the mastery or if the mastery gets changed, it's just better on a Bear Druid. That's fucking huge, because that means that you get more value out of every heal. They're a little bit of a giant meat shield, but they have things working to counteract that to help make sure that you're not draining your healer's mana. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that their active mitigation is actually very, very useful. They generate rage at a more consistent and stronger way than warriors do. They don't generate it as quickly, perhaps, when you're in an AoE pack, but they generate it consistently. So you have a good idea of when you're going to get it. And it doesn't vary too much between AoE and single target. You don't feel starved all the time in single target. Mark of Ursol is your magic damage reduction. And it's good that they just have a good way to, reduce magic damage. And when you don't need the magic damage, you use Iron Bark. Or is it called Iron Bark? Iron Fur. It's Iron Fur. When you use Iron Fur, you're not reducing damage on you, you're increasing the armor that you have. And this can stack. Let's say, I don't remember exactly how long it lasts, but let's say it lasts 5 seconds. You use it, you have a bunch of armor for 5 seconds, then at 3 seconds left you use it again. You have double the armor for 3 seconds. After those 3 seconds are done, you have 2 seconds of just the normal value of armor. That's the easiest way for me to explain that it stacks. You can keep using it. You can have a bunch of armor on yourself, which is just going to help you reduce even more damage, physical damage, and it's just going to make you a big fat shield. It's almost like your dungeon or your raid group is there with a big bear shield that's just protecting them, and it's so good, so powerful. It has very, very powerful cooldowns that are on charge-based systems that can be reduced very, very much by the talents. You can have Bark Skin on, I think now after it got nerfed, it's a minute cooldown. You can have Savage Defense. I think it's Savage Defense or Survival Instincts. I can't remember the names exactly, but the big, Fortifying Brew style cooldown has 2 charges. It's like a 2-minute cooldown. It's very, very powerful. And then Rage of the Sleeper is their artifact ability, the most overpowered shit in the fucking game as far as artifact abilities for tanks goes. It makes you reflect a percentage of damage that comes in. You just don't take that damage that's coming in, and then you just do more damage. And with the artifact traits that you can unlock for it, that's like, it's your I'm gonna destroy your life form, essentially. You get huge and red and you're bear, and it's like you're basically the bear to Leonardo DiCaprio's character in Revenant. Every time you use it, you just Revenant all over the fucking boss, essentially. That's fucking badass, first of all. Second of all, it's fucking terrifying. That scene in that movie was fucking terrifying. But it's just how powerful the Bear Druid is. Another thing is their utility, their massive amount of utility. They still have a combat res, and they're the only ones, along with Feral Druids, that have Stampeding Roar. Everyone knows how good Stampeding Roar is. I don't need to explain it to you. You know it's fucking fantastic. But as well, they have something that I think maybe isn't being hyped up enough, or maybe I'm just crazy and I'm giving it way too much value, but I think affinities are going to be fucking amazing. So let me explain what the affinities are. All the druids get them. And essentially what it means is that when you choose your main spec or whatever spec you're playing as, you have affinities for the 3 other specs. So if you're a bear, you have access to a balanced druid affinity, a feral druid affinity, goddamn words, and a resto druid affinity. And what this means is that you are granted the ability to, for example, Boomkin, you can shapeshift into a Moonkin. If you're a cat, you already have a cat form. If you're Resto, you just stay in caster form. But you're able to use spells from those affinities. So you have Star Surge, you get Sunfire, you get whatever they're calling Wrath and Lunar Fire now. You have access to those spells, but you also have a passive benefit. The Moonkin one gives you an increased range on all your abilities, which is kind of hilarious. You see a bear attacking, auto-attacking from 10 yards away. The cat one just gives you a move speed bonus, and the resto one gives you a passive, just heal. It's Ysera's gift, gives that to you just passively. So first of all, the passives are good to begin with. But what's really powerful is you're not tanking all the time. Let's be for real. Tanks will tank in 2 or 3, depending on the boss fight. And you're not always going to be tanking something. There's always going to be a moment where you're not tanking the boss, you're not getting hit in the face. You can do things outside of that. So you can just become a ranged DPS whenever you want to. You can just become a cat druid whenever you want to. You can turn into an extra healer whenever you want to. Think about the implications of that in mythic raids. Think about being able to bring one less healer, because in the super key important moment, your bear can switch over and just spam the raid or spam whoever with a shit ton, all his mana. Just use all of the mana. Doesn't matter if you're being effective. Just get as much healing as you can in this exact moment, because you have hots, you have direct heals, you have a 30-second heal. Use everything. Pop back into bear, keep tanking. Again, I don't know if maybe I'm hyping this too much, but I think that is going to be single-handedly the most valuable thing about bear druids that no one is talking about as much as I think that they should. Being able to just be able to do a 70% of the damage that a Moonkin or something could do. I mean, am I crazy for thinking that's fucking ridiculously good? I don't think so. I think that has so much value. And it's one of those reasons that just, I try to think of negatives for the bear druid. Okay, some of the talents are not, that fantastic. Some are a little bit boring. Others are really good, though. You have Pulverize very nice and early. The combining of Thrash and Lacerate makes it so much easier to stack things up to get Pulverize. You have Lunar Beam. You have fucking Galactic Guardian, so you're just shooting off Moonfires all over the place. It's hard to have a negative to say about the bear druid. Besides the fact that they use Rage, and that's just because I don't like Rage. But most people are fine with that. I see the Guardian Druid as the one spec that has so much utility, combined with being just stable by themselves. They have this stability of a protection warrior with the tools that I love from the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Not all of them exactly. It's just, a broad statement that I'm saying. But it's that kind of thing that I feel about it. Ultimately, I love the Vengeance Demon Hunter more than I love the Guardian Druid. But I would be a fool to say that the Guardian Druid is worse than the Vengeance Demon Hunter. I would be a fool to say the Vengeance Demon Hunter is better than the Guardian Druid, because that's not a true statement. The Guardian Druid has better mitigation, has better solid, just, if you don't use anything, you're not going to get fucking trucked in the face as soon as you get hit. You have stronger cooldowns, you have stronger things that you can do with it, you're more reliable, you have charge-based cooldowns that may be short, but you can just reduce all the damage of an attack that hits you, almost all the damage. I'm being, a little facetious, but they have Rage of the Sleeper, which is another fantastic cooldown. They're just so good. They're just so good. And it's hard for me to say that anything could possibly be better than Guardian Druid. Again, as you can already see, I struggle to find negatives to say about the Guardian Druid. And affinities, man, I'm telling you, affinities are going to just... They're gonna. I feel that they're gonna be a big thing. I'm calling it now, but I think that affinities are gonna be a very, very big thing for all druid specs. But for people like tanks and healers, especially, you're gonna have an extra slice of utility you didn't know you wanted in your life, and I think that's gonna be amazing. There you go. That's my rankings for all the tank specs in the Legion beta as of right now, June 17th, 2016. Again, as much as I did put classes like the Protection Warrior and the Blood DK down on the lower end, I think those two are they're fine, they're great as they are. I'm talking about my headspace, my thoughts, my ideas, why I'm leaning towards a certain 2 specs. If you watch the entire video, you know which ones those are, as my current mains going into Legion, which ones I'm going to really focus in. And I just feel that those are the ones that are going to have some of the most useful abilities and useful utility that I'll be able to use in my Mythic Raid team and my Mythic Dungeons I'm going to be doing. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoy this video. I put a lot of effort into this. This is actually the very first video that I'm going to be releasing that is heavily edited. I tried to put the length down as well. I didn't want it to be as long as it was. I wanted it to be a little bit closer to 45 minutes. But I just had so much to say, and I really wanted to go ahead and get that out there, especially with the intro and the outro that I'm doing now. I do apologize if that it's so long. I'm trying to get better. I haven't been doing this for long, and I'm trying to get better about everything that I'm doing. Again, this is the first time I heavily edit a video. I hope it turns out okay. I hope that the volume on the webcam is okay. Again, it's really not the best. I'm trying though. I'm really trying. I want to make this I want to do this right. But guys, if you enjoy this video, please go ahead, hit the like button. Let's aim for 3 likes. It'd be fantastic. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I have other videos that I'm going to be making, that I'm going to be releasing, with kind of my thoughts on everything. More things that are not super specific to specs, but more just tanking and Legion in general. And if you want to go ahead and see that, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support me in any way, shape, or form and what I'm doing here on YouTube, you can go ahead and go to my channel. Go on the right side. There's a little button called Fan Funding. You support my channel. It's basically donations. You donate whatever you'd like to do. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, the link is always in the description of all my videos. And if you want to watch me stream, I'm streaming occasionally on Twitch or YouTube Gaming. I've been kind of deciding between both of them, leaning a little more towards Twitch, but I'm waiting and seeing my audience, you guys, if there's a specific streaming service you would rather I stream on because it's more convenient for you, let me know and I will go ahead and get that done. I'm leaning personally a little bit more towards Twitch, but I'm willing to listen to you guys. You guys subscribe to the channel. You are the ones that are giving me the fuel and the energy and the passion to do this. So let me know what you want to see. And let me know if you'd like to see me do any other specific video about any other specific thing. And I can go ahead and get that done for you. Now, guys, I hope, again, that you enjoyed the video. And I hope to see you around in the next one.